Sound check 1. there. All right. We're all virtual today. I am your chair, Councillor Jeff Beattie, Vice Chair of Audit and Finance, filling in for Councillor Spatafora, who will be joining us virtually, as is the majority of our committee today. Councillor Kretsch, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Spatafora, Councillor Huang, all joining us online. And in chambers with me, Councillor Brad Clark. As we have quorum present, I'd like to call the meeting of Audit, Finance and Administration to order. Please remember, all in the gallery, that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Seeing as there are no ceremonial activities, if I could please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Looking to see Councillor Huang, Councillor Spatafora, thank you. Are there any amendments from committee members to the agenda? Seeing none, if I could have a show of hands to indicate your vote. All in favor? Seeing all hands go up. Thank you. That is carried. Moving on to item number 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. This is item 5.1. This is the meeting from February 3rd, 2025, which was a special development charges hearing, as well as 5.2. And that is a meeting from February 6th, 2025. If I could please have a mover and a seconder on the big screen. I see Councillor Brad Clark, seconded by Councillor Cameron Kretsch. Are there any discussions on the minutes? Seeing none, if I could have a show of hands, all in favor of the adoption of the minutes. And that is universal. Thank you. We have no delegations today. We have no items for information today. So we're moving expediently ahead to item 8.1 under items for consideration, which is the Utility Billing Transition 2025 Program Update. If I could have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. Seeing Councillor Spatafora, Councillor Brad Clark. Looking to see if there are any questions from committee to staff on the report. I am seeing none. With that, if we could have an electronic vote on this item, please.
Councillor Taddison, are you in the meeting? Councillor Taddison? Okay.
And the vote carries 7-0. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to 8.2, which is the changes to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation's role in municipal tax applications. This is a report FCS 25011. If I could have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. Seeing Councillor Tammy Huang, Councillor Cameron Kretsch. Any questions for staff on the report? Seeing Councillor Huang first.
Thank you. Could we just get a quick overview of this? Because I would like to understand how this is different from the normal sort of practice.
Absolutely. I see Clayton has queued up his microphone, and I'll pass it over to him. Thank you. If you could introduce yourself as well as we begin.
Good morning. It's Clayton Pereira, Director of Revenue Services. Just going to give an overview on this particular report. The recommendation is for taxation staff to continue reviewing applications for tax relief, specifically due to damage from fire, demolition, or repairs and renovations, and determine the amount of property tax relief. The following changes are this follows changes to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, otherwise known as MPAC's role, as MPAC will no longer provide adjusted assessments specific to those mentioned initially, that i.e. damage to fire, demolition, or repairs and renovations. And this was from the start date of July 2nd of 2024. So staff are developing best practices for calculating property tax relief in consultation with other municipalities in Ontario to align with approaches and ensure fairness, consistency, and ongoing improvement, including reviewing case law, ARB decisions, and adjusting as necessary moving forward.
And I also see that General Manager Mike Zagaric may have some additional comments on this.
Yeah. Through the chair, maybe I'll just add some institutional knowledge or background to this. Firstly, this was not a request municipalities asked of MPAC. This was a decision by MPAC to no longer provide this function, which they have provided since my time here at the city, so well over 20 years. MPAC's role previously, as it relates to these properties, they would assess the change in the assessed value because of, as Director Pereira identified and as referenced in the report, for instance, a fire. Then the city would take that change in assessment and apply tax rates to reflect the changed assessed and tax burden for that property. Staff reported in September of this change through a communication update. You see the report that's before you. Staff are recommending that we will absorb this within existing complement. I will note this is not necessarily a skill set or expertise that municipalities have, so we will make best efforts to reflect the change in assessed value. But just wanting to highlight, again, this was not a request municipalities made. This was a unilateral decision of MPAC, and I will describe it as a form of downloading to municipalities now. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Any further questions from Councillor Huang?
I have all the questions.
You may continue.
So as GM Zagaric has just said, we don't have the capability to do this. I do recall that Director Pereira did say that we will be looking from 3 different areas. So we will be getting some direction from the Assessment Review Board. We may get some third party. What's the actual course of action to actually get our staff upskilled to be able to do this type of work?
Okay, I'm going to look to the bench, starting with GM Zagaric.
Through the chair, I'll start, and then I'll invite Director Pereira to add. To be clear, taxation staff do have knowledge around assessment, but this was not a normal course of responsibilities of duties for taxation staff. Volume-wise, this is not, it's not significant in that maybe historically this represented approximately 10 or less than 10 appeals in a calendar and fiscal year. Therefore, staff are recommending we will absorb the function rather than, you'll see in alternatives, rather than engaging a third party or rather than referring this to the Assessment Review Board. If we were to review this to the Assessment Review Board, it would require additional resources over and above what staff are recommending, because it would require taxation expertise, legal expertise, and potentially external expertise. And for that reason, staff are suggesting, in terms of value to taxpayer and to be expedient in the process, that staff will absorb the function. If we see challenges, we will report back to council with respect to any challenges and any mitigation measures that may be necessary. So through the chair, I hope I've answered the councillor's question.
I'll look to Councillor Huang.
Yes, you have. Thank you. So I guess my last question then is, MPAC is through the province. MPAC has been kind of delaying on a lot of different things, and this is the most recent sort of downloading. Do we have any expectation of additional downloading, particularly since we're still waiting on a particular update to all of the assessment values. So I just don't know, are we going to see more of this? So in your opinion, please.
Looking back to GM Zagarek, please.
Through the chair, I'll rely on facts or knowledge. We have no knowledge, nor has any messaging been shared with city staff or municipalities regarding potential outcomes of their assessment review, including any further transition of roles and responsibilities to municipalities.
Thank you very much for those answers. Thank you, Chair. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Looking to see if any other committee members have some additional questions. Oh, I'm seeing Councillor Clark is on the list. Please proceed.
So refresh my memory, who funds MPAC?
Through the chair, municipalities fund impact.
And is there a board of directors with MPAC?
Through the chair, there is a board of directors.
And that board of directors, how are they appointed?
Through the chair, I'm not certain in terms of the appointment. I know that there are some municipal representatives, but I believe through the province, but I'll ask staff in case.
There's municipal representation.
And how are they appointed? Yeah, through the chair. There is municipal representation. We would have to confirm that they are appointed through the province.
Councillor?
It does seem odd that MPAC would choose to make this decision, and it puts municipalities in possibly a precarious position, because there is going to be a perceived sense of bias by the applicants. Because if the city is running the program, it's in our best interest to decline any changes. And so how do we ensure in this process that the citizens or the residents or the applicants are being treated fairly and without any bias?
GM Zagarek?
Through the chair, I'll start, and again, I'll invite staff to add on. Councillor, principally through the extension of the methodology as we understand it, that MPAC would have applied to amending the assessment. So again, we will do our best to reflect the same approach and methodology, but recognizing that that was not our role. We again are not intimately familiar with the methodology, but the best of our ability interpreting that and applying that on a go-forward basis.
Councillor?
Yeah, and I guess what I'm wrestling with is MPAC, when they did these appeals and they made those decisions, there really wasn't any bias because it didn't increase their bottom line one way or the other. But the municipality now conducts these hearings, and it's to their advantage to say no. And so I struggle, although I understand it's being forced upon us. We may have to see how this goes, but I fear that we're going to have some disgruntled people who are accusing the city of having a bias in this process.
We'll see if General Manager has any more
Through
comments.
the chair, fully agree with all of those comments, and which is why we flagged this back in September in the reports before you. Ideally, MPAC continuing their independent role as it relates to assessing properties and changes of properties, as well as defending their changes in properties. Now that task is being transferred onto municipalities as it relates to this particular subset of properties relating to these events. But again, the benefit of MPAC performing this role, they were a third party, they're independent, they're experts in property assessment, and they were tasked with defending the changes in assessment. To Councillor Clark's comment, that transfers to municipalities, and there can be a perceived bias that the municipalities are trying to retain tax dollars and are limiting in terms of changes to assessed value and changes to impact. And now we then are tasked with defending those changes in assessed value. So to my earlier comments, I do see this as a form of downloading.
Okay, thank you, General Manager.
Last question. I see my time is wrapping up. Are there experts that we can lean on to assist us to ensure fairness and no perception of bias? I know you can't eliminate it, but you can put systems in place to help assure the applicant that their hearing is being conducted almost in a quasi-judicial fashion to ensure that they're being heard and that it's being assessed on an even and level field. I'm struggling because I don't know who out there could help us, but I fear we're going to have some challenges.
Thank you, Councillor. And just for reference, I'm using the Tom Jackson clock today, so I'm only billing you for your speaking time, not for the answers. I'll look to the General Manager for a response.
Through the chair, there may be the need to leverage external expertise, but likely through the appeal process. And we would learn through that appeal process if we need to pivot or change in terms of our methodology. If a property owner appeals the city's determined change in assessment, we will likely have to turn to some external expertise for that independence and to defend the city with respect to its assessed value or its work in determining the change in the assessed value.
Thank you.
So it's really within the realm of your operations. Will there be perhaps an annual report to council so that we can understand what's working, what's not working, how do we improve it? It's always good to review our processes as we go through this thing.
Through the chair, each year we provide committee and council a assessment appeals report that just summarizes what's transpired across all tax sectors, and we can look to build this change into that report.
Yeah, I'm aware of that report, but I'm wanting to have a good look at the process and how it's worked and any recommendations that staff would make to improve that process. This is new to us, so it's a little bit more than just telling us how many appeals came in and what the outcome was.
General Manager.
Through the chair, I appreciate that feedback and that response. We can look to prepare a standalone reports at the 1-year anniversary or sooner if we determine that we need to take some further mitigation steps that requires either authority from committee or just sharing that information with committee and council.
Thank you. I'll leave that with staff and the city manager. And I await the report. I hope it works out well, but it might be a bit of a challenge for us. So thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm looking now to Councillor Spatafora, who's next up on the list.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple quick questions for Mike around the appeal process. Sorry, GM Zagaric. So if we, are you going to bring something back that looks like when we do an assessment in a resident appeals, are you bringing a report back stating that we, like there's an independent board or company or something that we can use to make the determination? Maybe it's impact and there'd be a fee for that application. So I'm just wondering what the impact financially would be to us if we go to appeal, who pays that appeal? And if you've looked into that yet, and if you haven't, are you planning on bringing that information back through you, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor. Just before the GM answers, I do want to recognize that Councillor Tattison has finally made the connection. I know that the councillor has been trying to get on and technology has not been in his favor. So welcome, Councillor Tattison. You're actually on the board twice. So I don't know if that translates to something, but I'll look now to the General Manager to complete the response. Please proceed.
Through the chair, if through the city's determination of the change in assessed value, the property owner chooses to appeal to the ARB, the city is required to participate. in that process. And it's through that process that we would have to engage some external expertise to defend the city's position with respect to the change. In our report back to the previous item, we would include that in our report back regarding the number of appeals and the use of any external expertise, the associated costs, and the outcome, ultimate outcome with respect to those appeals.
Okay. Councillor?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else on the list, and nobody else has indicated by hand. So with that said then, if there are no further questions for staff, we'll now be looking for an electronic vote to approve the recommendations in the report. Please indicate your vote now.
Just waiting for Councillor Tattison. He's got a thumbs up. Thumbs up, thank you.
And that carries by a vote of 8-0. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to 8.3, which is amendments to the outstanding business list. I understand that there's some items to be removed as they are considered to be complete. If I could have a mover and seconder to approve the amendment to the OBL. Seeing Councillor Kretsch and Councillor Alex Wilson, thank you. Any questions to staff on the OBL? And seeing none, if I could have an electronic vote at this time, please. And that also carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to item 9, which is motions, which there are none. Moving now to item 10, which is notices of motion. I don't see any listed. Looking to colleagues to see if there's any coming from the floor. Also seeing none. Thank you. Which brings us to the private and confidential closed session minutes from February 6, 2025. This is 11.1. If I could have a mover and seconder to adopt the closed minutes of February 6, 2025, and that the minutes shall remain confidential. If I could have a mover, Councillor Kretsch. Councillor Huang, thank you. Please indicate your electronic vote now.
Apologies, Chair Beatty, this is just a show of hands.
Okay. In that case, just a show of hands. And seeing all hands have been shown. Thank you, colleagues. Being that there is no further business, the Audit and Finance Committee is now adjourned at a record-setting 9:53 a.m. I think I should chair more often. What do you think? Dang.
Absolutely.